I hope you're excited because I, for one, definitely am excited. My name is Katlego mabusela, but everybody calls me KG, so you can call me KG as well. This is module 1. And what is that module? It's the business model canvas. We're going to talk a lot about what that is and what's involved in a business model canvas and what its purpose is. So sit back, keep your headphones on, keep your notes in hand, take as many notes as possible. At this stage, you should know that the program works as follows. You're going to watch this video, consume this content. Following each of these segments, you're going to have a little quiz, a little exercise to do. You cannot move on to the next part of the module if you have not answered those questions. If you don't answer the questions, you can't move on. If you don't move on, it means you can't ultimately get to where you want to get to, which is where you're pitching in front of our stakeholders for an opportunity of some really exciting investments and prizes up for grabs. This session in particular, or at least this module in itself, is broken up into some segments, 3 in particular, about 20 minutes each. With that said, let's get into it. The business model canvas. If you and I don't have the basics in place, it's going to be a pretty superficial conversation. It's going to be a pretty superficial exercise. So what I want to do, with your permission, is for us to start at a place that I think you and I will resonate with, which is, the reason behind we do what we do. And I'm sure some of you are thinking, what is he going on about? But think about it this way. We oftentimes, 9 out of 10 times, entrepreneurs will start a business, not necessarily because there's a market need for it, right? I'm going to say that again. 9 out of 10 times, entrepreneurs will start a business not because there's a market need for it, but more so because there's a personal need for it. Let me give you an example. Oblomile, and you're just like, whoa, you know what? I could use some money. We could all use some extra cash or some cash to begin with, right? And so you start a business because, I'd say it's the easiest way to generate some revenue. But you and I both know it's also not as easy as that. But the point here is you start a business at that point because you have a need for something, and that need thing is money, right? Another need that entrepreneurs fulfill through starting their own business is a vanity need, right? I want to be a CEO, I want to be a boss, I want my Instagram to look on fleek and all of those things. That's one of the other reasons people start businesses. I'm not saying these are the right reasons. I'm giving reasons as to why people do start their own business and consider themselves to be entrepreneurs. It brings about the whole question around what is an entrepreneur, and I'm hoping that in your module with Neo, you go deep into that conversation around what really forms the DNA of an entrepreneur. Because, like with anything, just because the professional title exists doesn't mean that everybody is good at that particular title. So just because there's the entrepreneurship title doesn't mean that everybody is a good entrepreneur. But anyway, what I wanted us to do is to start at the beginning, which is this idea of why. Now, some of you might be aware of this man, some of you might not. We'll include a link to one of his videos, his TEDx videos in the module. And his name is Simon Sinek. The reason I want you to familiarize yourself with him is because he's really been pushing thought leadership in the space of purposeful entrepreneurship, purposeful organizations, really. But what he argues is this, is that people no longer care. Nobody cares. Okay, let me say this again so you hear it. Nobody cares about what you do. Nobody even cares about how you do it. People will buy why you do what you do. His video is called The Golden Circle, and he speaks about this concept, and I'll put some graphics on the screen to help you sort of grasp it as well. But I want us to talk a little bit about that, to walk through that journey. Oftentimes when I speak to entrepreneurs, or I'm introduced to entrepreneurs, even myself in my younger years, when I would introduce what I do or what my business is about, I'd speak about what it is that we do. An example would be let's say you run in a design firm, right? The design firm is called KG and Whoever Designs. And you walk into a room and you say to people, hi, my name is Katlego, and I run KG and Whoever Designs. We create the most amazing designs in the world, right? You've done 2 things in that. You've told me the function of what you do. So you've told me your product or service. And you've also then told me what you think I care about, which is how you do it. A different example in terms of how people describe their house. they will talk about quality. Oh, quality, we've got the best quality in the world. Or they'll use sustainability. Or all the words somehow have this ET in it. Or, they all sound very similar. Quality, sustainability, price. When you get to price, and price is one of the things that you are selling in the market, you have become commoditized. And that's why I want us to have this conversation, essentially, right? But here's what the research is showing us. The research says people are now looking for beyond the product, beyond the service. Because the reality is, when I buy a product, I expect quality. When I buy a service, I expect quality. An example would be if you walked into your doctor's office, right? And he said, listen, buddy, you know I'm a doctor, so you know what he does, right? And he says the only thing he can guarantee, or the reason that makes him any different from anybody else, is that you won't die. That's what he guarantees you. Quality. He'll guarantee that you'll be sewed up when you leave the doctor. Those are what we call hygiene factors. As a consumer, I expect that, of course, I'm going to be sewn up and I'm going to be in the same condition that I would want to be at any part, and if I went to any good sort of medical practitioner, right? So you need to understand that people are not looking at those two things anymore. No consumer really cares. And the thing has to do with the fact that the consumer is a lot more educated. We've got a lot more options as consumers, right? And so, of course, it means that I'm looking for something beyond those two things. And that's why it becomes important for you as an entrepreneur to have a sense of purpose, a reason, a solid reason to exist. Now, let's imagine for a minute you're sitting in your office. You're sitting in your office and you have to make a decision. And that decision really is around, let's use an example. You're trying to hire some lawyers, right? Legal practice, legal services. Two companies come in. We'll call them Company A and Company B. Here's the example. Company A walks in and says, hi, my name is Katlego mabusela from Company A. We are a legal firm and we provide some really amazing legal services. We've been in the business for about 20, 30 years, and we would love to do business with you. That's option one. Option two, Company B comes in and says, hi, my name is KG from Company B. Before I tell you about our business, I want to share something with you. I have been a practicing legal professional for 15 years now. But prior to that, I was studying. And of course, being a young person, I was living at home. And I want to tell you a little bit about that story. And here's how that goes. I grew up in a township. And in that township, we had a small little 4-room house. In that 4-room house was myself, it was my parents, and it was my 2 brothers. When we were growing up, my parents didn't have much. My father ran a little shop, and he ran it with all he had. My mother supported that activity every morning, and then she would leave to go and do her work. My father would open very early in the morning, and he closed that shop very late in the evening. But that little shop is the reason myself and my 2 brothers were not only able to be fed, to be roofed, and to be sent to school, but it's the reason we graduated and ended up being professionals, paid professionals, qualified professionals. Unfortunately, my father is many things, hardworking, giving, but what he was not was a legal professional. And at some point, he found himself facing a lawsuit. And as a result, his business closed. He lost that business. The same business that had taken my brothers and I and taken us through school, kept clothes on our back, put food in our belly. That business was more than just a business, it was a family legacy. It was more than just a business. That's the reason I decided to do the work I do now. It is because I could be a lawyer, I could provide legal services, or I could look for people like my father who, one, could not afford the kind of legal services that we provide, 2, really, really needed it. Because for them, it wasn't about the law, it was about their families. It wasn't about business, it was about their families and their kids and keeping food in their stomachs. And so that's why we wake up every day at Company B. Not to practice law, but to make sure businesses like my father's keep clothes on their children's back and food in their bellies. Now, if you are in that position, listening to those two pitches, listening to those two stories, one of them resonates more. I'm going to take a guess and assume that it's probably the second one. And the reason is, right, that there is a sense of purpose beyond the function of what it is that they do. And it's communicated hopefully well, right? In all honesty, that was a bit of a freestyle, but I hope it got the point across. And so that's where we need to move our businesses to as entrepreneurs, specifically as South African entrepreneurs. Too often, we are selling the same thing. We are, showing up with the same business cards, telling us about the not even the benefits, but the functions of the services that we provide. And we've got no real standout quality or differentiator, as they'd call it. And it's incredibly important, before we even touch the business model canvas, that I stress the importance of you thinking long and hard about why you exist. What problem are you solving for who? And it must be real, because the truth is, especially as the economy is in the situation that it's in now, and things are tighter and the rand is tighter, right? Consumers are going to be asking themselves, why you versus the person next to you? So let's be careful not to be like street vendors. And I often ask myself this, that you pull up to the robots and you'll have 5 people running to your window, and all 5 are selling the exact same thing. At that point, as a consumer, how do I decide between all 4 or 5 of them? Because you're all selling the banana. You're all selling them at the exact same place. Is it the first person who makes it to my window, right? First to market, I guess we call it that. Is it, the best presented bananas, the ones that don't look like they're sweating, which is a packaging thing, et cetera, et cetera. The point is, it's making it a very difficult decision for the consumer. Worse yet, for you. And I think if we want to, break certain cycles, in the South African entrepreneurial narrative, it's that we need to really start to build businesses with a clear sense of purpose, and not just pure function, and move past commoditized businesses. Really think long and hard about the value that we deliver, about the reason we exist. I implore you to watch that video. It's called The Golden Circle. Simon Sinek, he explains it, and he goes through that thinking very, very, very beautifully. It's a TEDx talk, I think, that he delivered. So please do consume that. But I thought that was a great place for us to start, because without that context, none of what we do will matter. Without that why, none of what we do matters. Let's take a break. Got a bit of an exercise for you. You handle that, and I'll see you shortly. Okay, so we're back. And now we can get into the actual business model canvas itself. We've got 2 more segments in this module. I think a good place for us to start with the business model canvas is to not necessarily dig into each of those categories. I mean, we can talk through the categories, that's fine, and we will get to that, right? But we also have to understand its purpose. Many of you, I'm sure, have set and drawn out, typed out, written out pages and pages and pages and pages of this beautiful thing that we were all told is going to make us amazing entrepreneurs. And it's called a business plan. Yes, exactly. Right? And in the business plan, you do your market analysis, you do your SWOTs, you do all of the stuff that you typically would do in a business plan. And then you get to that part at the end. You know that beautiful part where you put your financials? And without a doubt, all your financials reflect that within 3 to 5 years, you're going to be making millions. And you're going to be like Elon Musk. And you're going to be the Jeff Bezos of our time. Now, there's absolutely nothing wrong with ambition. So don't, I'm being a little facetious, of course. But the business plan has a time and a purpose, right? And a function. But what we need to be aware of is that the entrepreneurial landscape is too dynamic to navigate with a static document, right? Because what happens with that document is you create the document, and we live also in a world where people hire people to make those documents for them. So now I'm supposed to be building this business based on a document that I have no understanding of, right? I think the going rate is like 5,000 for a starter pack business plan these days, right? And I think it's because obviously for applications and a lot of these funding bodies that we apply to would require a business plan, and so somebody has decided to create a business model that allows for them to, leverage that and access, some funds from that. But anyway, the point is that whilst the business plan is important, you need a more dynamic tool, a tool that allows you to navigate your journey just a little easier, just a little more, how do I say? What's the term? There is a term. There's a term. It's a cool term. It's coming back to me. See, I'm getting old. It's the COVID, guys. I had the vid, but I'm recovering. Don't worry. Well, I'm recovered. Agile. That's it. It allows for you to be more agile as an entrepreneur. And so that's what the business model canvas's purpose is. It is to give you, one, clarity as an entrepreneur in terms of what your business does, how it does it, what needs to happen for certain things to work, who is important, what is important, and etc., etc. So it gives you a snapshot of that critical information, right? And of course, what that means is, should you need to change it, it gives you a model that you can input information into, make those necessary changes, and still have that tool for you to use going forward. So it's an incredibly important tool. It's almost the equivalent of a compass. It's like a business compass. If you're going through, again, navigating the seas of entrepreneurship, that's what a business model canvas does. It is a canvas. It allows for you to also paint freely and almost give birth to this idea of your business. It's a systemized way of bringing your business to life, right? But it is also a tool that you would use on a day-to-day basis. What I invite you to do is to spend some time researching business model canvases. In fact, I want you to think of 3 businesses, right? And see if you can populate their business model canvas. At the end of this session, that's one of the exercises I need you to do. So to do a mock-up of their business model canvases based on what you think, would the information would be for their business. But anyway, that's where I wanted us to start, which is to say, what is a business model canvas? Now, what actually goes into a business model canvas? Let's talk a little bit about that. Okay, so welcome back. Let's talk about the actual stuff that goes into a business model canvas. Now, on the screen somewhere should be, an image of the business model canvas, either to my left or right. I can't tell where it is because it's not here yet. But business model canvas is broken up into a number of categories, right? And we're going to talk through each one of them and what information you should be putting into that category. The first one, which is possibly the most important one, although all of them are important, is the one in the center, the big, rectangle in the center. And that is key for you to start with, right? You've got all the other stuff. You could start else, but you need to start here, and I'll explain why. It's the value proposition, right? And the value proposition speaks to this. The question you're answering in the value proposition is, what value does your business add to who, right? So that what happens? Are you getting what I'm saying? What value does your business add to whom, and so that what happens? And I want you to take a little bit of time and think through that and write that sentence out. Say, we do this for whoever, right? So that what happens? And then once you've written that sentence, I want you to think about it again and try and refine it at least 3 or 4 times, right? And that last one, that final one that you come out with, that would be what we call, I guess, your value proposition. What value are you bringing to the market? So that is category number 1. We'll obviously go deeper into each of these in our Q&A or our one-on-one session. Then there is on the far, I guess, if it would be your far right, right? On the far right, there are your customer segments, possibly as important, if not more important. In fact, I think they're just as important as the first one, right? Now, here we speak to the customers that would buy what you are selling, right? Typically, organizations have one sort of big customer segment, and within that particular customer category, there would be segments in there because maybe they have different product suites that speak to different, customers. So an example would be just off the top of my head, if you're a Cadbury and you're selling sweets and you're selling confectionaries, you would have your customer. You clearly define who your customer is, right? But within that customer, there would be different customer segments because not all your sweets are bought by the same person. If you get what I'm saying, it's a bit of a strange one to put out there, but that's kind of the best one I could come up with off the top of my head. But that's also important. So think very, very much around the idea of who your ideal customer is, right? So if you are, maybe let's take a graphics design company, just as an example, right? If they're in the business of, creating, I can't even think of how they would have phrased it for themselves, but the point is they're a graphic design business, and that's part of their value proposition. And they would then be servicing maybe entrepreneurs in particular, right? So they work with small businesses, SMMEs. That would be a customer segment, right? But maybe they might do professionals as well, so individuals. But the professional, portfolio and profiles and all that kind of stuff, that becomes a customer segment as well. If they're also servicing, the major sort of bigger corporations, that would be a separate customer segment. And the reason you want to outline them very distinctly is because you engage with each of these customers very differently, right? You will not necessarily engage with the individual the same way that you'd engage with a big corporation versus the same way that you would engage with an SME. And it becomes very important for you to be aware of who these segments are. But ultimately, it also speaks to the value that you're adding. If you don't know who your customer segments are, the likelihood is that you probably are not necessarily adding value to any particular grouping of people. And that becomes a challenge because it means that you are now doing a business of vanity because you're not necessarily building the business to solve a problem in the market, but you're doing it for yourself, which is a whole conversation that I have no time to get into. We're not doing these businesses for ourselves. It's not for our benevolence, but to actually generate value, and you receive payment because you've added value to the market. So that means you must be adding value to somebody. And for you to be adding value means you must be solving a problem. Right. So that is that second category. Then there is, just next to it, you'll see it says customer relationship. So this speaks to the type of relationship you want to have with that customer, the customer segments that you've just outlined. And you'll see there's some notes provided, but essentially it speaks to what kind of sort of relationship do you want to have with that customer? Do you want to have an alarmist relationship? Do you want to have there's a whole drop-down menu of potential types of relationships you can have with your customer. You have to decide what the right fit would be from your side. And then just beneath that would be the channels. And channel speaks to, right, if you're going to have a relationship with this customer, you have to be engaging with them frequently in some or other format, in some or other channel, through some or other channel. And the question, I guess, in this instance is, what are those channels for? For you, exactly. So think long and hard about that. Is it social media? And if it is social media, which social medias? Because not all platforms work for all businesses and business types, right? Is it telephonic? Is it a a sort of monthly meeting? Is it, conferences, quarterly conferences where you maintain your relationship with clients through that as well, or potential customers? So do you have to be present in those spaces? Now that COVID has hit as well, what does that mean? I mean, do you still use the same channels? Have the channels changed? I think the easier ones are the fact, or at least the easy outcome or insight, is that a lot of businesses have moved online or digital, right? So the 9 out of 10 times you'll be engaging with your customer on some or other digital platform more frequently than you would have, let's say, 2 years ago. Right. So that's that. And then there are key resources. Key resources speaks to this. There's some in any business, there's always going to be a lot of things happening, right? But there are about maybe 5 to 10 resources that are a necessity for your business to operate, right? You need to go through that list and answer it for yourself. What are those key resources that are necessary for your business to operate on a day-to-day basis? Technology. What technology is required that has to be there and has to be available, right? Number two, what human resource is necessary and has to be available? What IP? Look, I'm not going to go through the whole list, but the point is, think long and hard about what resources are necessary for your business to operate, and make sure that you have those basics in place to underpin your operations as well. You'll see that just beneath that or close to that as well would be sorry, let me take a break. Right, so just above that would be key activities. What are key activities? Simply put, what things need to happen on a daily basis for the business to operate. Now, for you to know this means you must know how your business operates. You must have thought around the system of producing your value. How does that work? What's involved? How long does it take for it to turn, for it to end from 0 to 100% and repeat it over and over again? And then you must be able to state what key activity is required for that process to happen, to unfold repetitively at the same level of quality, and et cetera, et cetera. So that's incredibly important as well. Key activities are very, very important because it speaks to the operations of your business as well. And then on the far left would be key partners. Now, key partners, I'd say it's a bit of a gray area in the sense that sometimes people like suppliers could be key partners, right? Because nothing is cast in stone. But what it does give you is an idea of, a list of people or organizations that would be important, but are not necessarily part of your daily operations, but you would be able to lean on them either from a marketing perspective, from a research perspective, from a supplier perspective, whatever it might be. But the point is, that you have them, you are aware of them as strategic partners that you could either serve, right, or add value to, or trial products with, or whatever it is. But the point is, you could tap into them to gain some sort of value that will ultimately improve your business and move you forward. And then you'll see the two big blocks at the bottom. One is around I think it's revenue lines, and then the other one is around cost structure. Cost structure, let's start there. It's pretty straightforward. What costs are incurred or are always present or are necessary in the operation of your business? Simply put, what is your overhead looking like, right? So we're not necessarily looking for the amount in this, but we're looking for the line items. What are the key costs that are necessary for your business to operate? Understood? Yeah, that's what we're looking for under cost structure, right? And again, with any of these categories, there's a more in-depth description that is obviously part of your pack. So don't stress, have a read through that if you didn't necessarily understand. But then again, that's why we're going to have a live Q&A session, and you can ask me whatever you need to ask me. And then, like I said, revenue. So how does your business make money? Where does the money come from? Is it subscriptions? Is it advertising? Excuse me. Is it just direct sales? But whatever it is, give us those at least 3-4 revenue lines that you would typically see on your income statement. And of course, they don't always all perform at the same level, and some maybe will only kick off at certain thresholds, and et cetera, et cetera. But what are they? What is the composition, of those revenues, and what would it look like. Okay, so those are the categories that you're looking at from a business model canvas perspective. What you would do now is you would start to populate yours. But I think a place for us to start with, let's do the mock-up. Okay, pause, sorry. Okay, so there you have it, your business model canvas categories. You've got an exercise that you need to now do before you can move on to your next module. But remember that you and I are going to have a Q&A. We're going to have a face-to-face. We can chat if there are any questions, so jot them down. But it'll only be of value if you've done the exercise. So go through the exercises, complete the business model canvas for your own business, so that when you engage with me, you're engaging with me from a place of having actually gone through the process, and you've got a better idea, Nyana, of what it is that's going on. And then I can at least help, figure out the gray areas or create clarity where there is no clarity. But thank you very much. I hope this module is serving you so far. And I'll see you on the next one, and I'll see you in our live session. Awesome.